Welcome to part 1 of the Wellington job, a 9-part mini-series documenting my recent week-long trip to New Zealand's capital city. We start with a bit of the usual rail activity here in Tauranga. Before going to the airport, I went to the Strand in order to get DL 9688 with train 482 to Kinleith. What I wasn't expecting was to see DSG 3155 along for the ride as well. Our next port of call was the Crossroad crossing at Sulphur Point, where the DL and DSG are seen reversing into the yard in order to pick up a rake of ZK wagons. But in the end I didn't have enough time to stay and watch them go back through the crossing. Then at least a quarter of an hour later, along came DL 9423 with a run-of-the-mill container train from Auckland. In this case it was MP3. And after a largely hassle-free flight, but an annoyingly slow bus ride through Miramar and other parts of Wellington, I finally found myself outside Wellington Station. For reference, the current station was opened in 1937. This is the southern terminus of the North Island main trunk, though most of the train services are provided by Metlink and the Matangi electric multiple units, with 2 locomotive hauled services also running to Masterton and Palmerston North. At the time of uploading, the Northern Explorer to Auckland still hasn't returned to service. The Matangi EMUs were built by Hyundai Rotem of South Korea. The first batch, comprising 43 units, was built between 2008 and 2012, with class leader 4103 entering service in 2010. As for the second batch, which comprised 35 units, that was built between 2014 and 2016. The motor cars are classified as FP, with the trailer cars being classified as FT. There are 83 of these 2-car units in service, and they replaced the much older English Electric and Gans Marvag units on Wellington commuter services. Fortunately, at least 2 examples of both the aforementioned classes have been preserved. To fill in time before checking into my motel, I decided to ride on Matangi 4178 from Wellington to Kenepuru on the 13:33 or 1:33 PM to Waikanai. I didn't hang around for too long at Kenepuru, as it turned out I didn't have as much time to fill in as I initially thought. Takapu Road, the first station out of Wellington, was my local for this whole trip. Incidentally, my accommodation was right next to the railway line. Expect a lot more clips like this as the series goes on. After a somewhat tedious and admittedly exhausting trip to the nearby Countdown supermarket, I hopped on Matangi 4443 for a run to Wellington. As for why I went back to Wellington in the first place, it was to watch the evening peak time trains, in particular the services to Masterton. After DSC 2665 scurried away, along came the motive power for train 1608, the 1730 to Masterton. This was DFB 7145, a locomotive I hadn't seen since January 2017. '7145 used to be a DFT, later part of the DFM subclass, and was recently overhauled and upgraded to DFB specs at Hutt Workshops.
Stopping at all stations is due to depart from platform 7. Please board now for this service.
Before 7145 left, we got Matangi units 4201, 4276 and 4299 leaving on a stopping service to Porirua. Incidentally, we'll see a bit more of Porirua station later on in this series. After DFB 7145 left with train 1608, fellow DFBs 7010 and 7348 showed up to double-head the 1818 to Masterton. I thought this was quite unusual since I'm only used to seeing one locomotive on each of these services. Before we go any further, I think it's also worth mentioning that both of these DFBs used to be painted in the Max Blue colours, as they were used in Auckland commuter service from 2010 to 2015, though 7010 left that role in 2012. I decided not to hang around to watch train 1610 leave, and instead I rode back to Takapū Road with Matangi units 4541 and 4443 again. This was the 5:41 PM Wellington to Porirua service. I decided to finish the day's rail fanning by filming 3 KiwiRail freight services in the area surrounding this station, specifically 565 from Castlecliff, 220 to Auckland, and 225 from Auckland. Just in case you don't know where Castlecliff is, it's a suburb in the city of Whanganui, and also the terminus of a short branch off of the Matangi to New Plymouth line.